everyone, it's Val here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing a bit of my story pulling back from 2018 to 2020 when I neglected art almost entirely for 2 years straight, as well as how I got back and caught up with everything I've missed in just a year, aka 2021. So without further ado, let's get started with today's topic. Before telling my story, I see a lot of misconception people have towards practicing and improving their art. Like, you know how a lot of art tutorials go, you need to practice every day to improve, but they never really mention how? Well, that's partially true. You do need practice to improve if that ain't obvious enough. And improving takes time, and it differs for each person based on their experience and capabilities. However, you don't need to draw every single day, because I sure as hell don't. I tried doing daily studies before only to get burnt out in just 4 days, and improving your art doesn't always need to take decades if you do it effectively. So yes, the keyword is practice effectively, not every day. Especially when you're doing it aimlessly, you won't bear any results nonetheless. As for my story, it started in 2018. It was the year when I moved school and I was trying to adapt with the new system and workloads. I still drew a lot until February and it slowly decreases and eventually just end up with doodles I did in class, and I stopped drawing anything serious. And here, how I define a serious drawing is when I'm drawing with a clear aim to improve or any kind of goal in general. In other words, it was a year filled with aimless drawings or your so-called doodles. As I progressed to 2019, the amount of drawings dropped tremendously. In fact, I stopped drawing entirely around December 2018 till May 2019, which was like half a year, I guess. On top of that, there were barely any personal works, and 9 out of 10 of the drawings were all done for class assignments. I drew cubes, cylinders, basic shapes, or whatever drawing fundamentals the class provided to me back then. Regardless, the only time I drew was during art class, which was probably just an hour or two per week, or none if they canceled. In 2020, I started to pick up drawing again. It was a very slow progress due to school assignments, but I was starting to adapt to the workloads a lot better than last year. I also started being more serious in digital art after reevaluating the career prospects for art in this digital era compared to being a traditional artist. But damn, that was not easy to catch up. Only had less than a year left before university applications started opening, and at that time I thought to myself, how the hell am I supposed to catch up to all these in just a year? Not only did I neglect art for the past 2 years, now I'm switching to a new media. I did try digital art before on Speedpaint during junior high, but I never really gotten too much into it, so I stopped and pursued traditional art instead, mainly watercolor. And during the first few months adapting to digital art, starting from Wacom, took me a while to adapt since we're drawing on a tablet while the cursor and everything else is on screen. Then the application features and shortcuts, layering, and above all, how different color theory is on digital and traditional art. Specifically watercolor, it was one of my most experienced media other than pencil sketches. So yeah, one drawing could take me weeks to finish back then, or months if you're putting school assignments into account. I progressively got better and faster, of course, but that took a lot of effort and patience there. And lastly, 2021. Boom! COVID happened. School went online. Suddenly all the workload went poof. No more school events, organization works, after school activities, yada yada. I suddenly had so much free time and I had no idea what to do, honestly. Hence, I started getting really serious in art, mainly to compensate the time I've lost. Also started building my art portfolio and social media. Had my struggles when I first got back to my platform, but I'll save that topic for another day. Eventually expanded my platform and started YouTube, even started voiceover videos like this one. Hi! Honestly, if you ask myself from last year or even me around early 2021, I would never expect myself to ever reveal my voice to public because I used to hate my voice, never liked how high pitched it was, but I grew to care about more important things. It is what it is. And voila! That was how 2021 turned out to be my most productive year so far, and you can see all the works I've done on my social media in comparison to my older posts, most active on Instagram. So after all that, what's the recipe, Val? 5 ways I found most effective on me. Number 1, set a goal. Strive to improve with every drawing, no matter how small it is. As I've mentioned as well from my art block video, there are long-term and short-term goals. In short, long-term goals are those focusing mainly on a bigger picture, your future, your ambition. On the contrary, short-term ones are focused on a present timeline, referring to your technical skills. Once you've set your personal goals, you can add an external motivation by having a competition, a healthy one, of course. It could be a friend, or you strive to improve and reach the level of your art gods, or even try surpassing them. Second tip, study from references. If anyone ever told you to draw from imagination and that drawing with references is plagiarism, I'll tell you something. That's complete nonsense. Don't buy it. Drawing purely from imagination isn't going to get you anywhere. References help build your visual library. In other words, you can't possibly draw something without knowing what they look like. For instance, you can't draw an apple without knowing what an apple is, nor what it looks like, and same goes for everything else. It's a different story if you're studying another artist or someone else's work and post it afterwards, then you should tag and credit them. Number 3, observation. The most underrated and underestimated skill, honestly. Probably should have put it in number 1, in fact. But anyways, this is probably the most useful and effective way of learning I've done. The more you practice the way you see an image and your surroundings, you're adding a ton of things into your visual library and understanding towards certain things others may not see. Perhaps you could use the tip to practice every day, but by that, we don't draw every day, we observe. If you don't feel like drawing or you don't have the time to draw as much throughout a certain period of time, use your time to observe. Train your eyes to see things normal people can't, and by that I don't mean ghosts, by the way. There is a huge difference between seeing and observing. Let me give you an example. You see this image. Normal people would go, great scenery or great landscape. And if you ask them to describe what they see, they would most likely go, I see mountains and a river in between the grasslands and the sky. However, as an artist, you can grasp so many information from a single glance. First, the difference in values and contrast. Starting from the most obvious one, the foreground's much darker and it gradually gets lighter towards the background. You can also see how the foreground's contrast is clearer or stronger, while the background's more faded. As a result, it directs our eyes' focus to the more contrasting part of the image, namely the grass and river, or you may say the foreground. Other than the values and contrast, you can observe the lighting and textures. For instance, apart from the color differences, the grass can also be identified and differentiated from the water based on its rougher or matte surface. And how do we know that? Because textures are also indicated by how light bounces from the object itself, or in other words, the reflectiveness of the surface. Hence, even if the picture is black and white, our brain can also process and identify the middle part as water due to how it has a shinier surface, as light bounces on watery surfaces more reflectively than solid surfaces. Lastly, color. Obviously, the hues, the grass is green, water is blue, mountains gray, and the sky has a tint of yellow to it. But furthermore, you can observe its saturation and how it directs the viewer's eyes towards the main focus of the image, namely the foreground. Needless to say, our eyes are usually attracted to more saturated tints, and warm colors. Okay, fourth tip, 70% comfort zone, 30% challenge. Pretty sure you might have heard this from other artists before, but if you haven't, I'm gonna say it again. When practicing your drawing skills, staying 100% in your comfort zone won't help you improve much, because you're simply repeating what you already know and most likely good at. However, same goes for the other way around. Too much challenges in a piece will only result in a massive struggle, dissatisfaction, and lead to a faster burnout. Like, you're not motivated to continue the piece because it's so hard. Nonetheless, we improve most when we enjoy what we're doing. With that said, keep the challenges minimal, but also keep adding up the challenge with every piece and strive to improve with every single artwork. And most importantly, keep drawing and pace yourself. Don't forget to also take breaks in between. You don't want to feel burnt out. Last but not least, getting feedbacks from others. Don't be afraid to show your art to others. Feedbacks from others help you identify the things you've missed, since you can't judge your own mistakes when you're not even aware of it. Thus, getting feedbacks from someone more experienced will help you loads. But if you're in a situation where you have no tutor, you can ask your friends or family members and see if they caught the message you're trying to portray through your art. Needless to say, if even a non-artist can understand your intentions, then that's a really good sign. However, there is a clear difference between a constructive feedback or advice and a non-constructive one. So you must learn to differentiate them, and remember, keep an open mind. Apart from pure insults, which you can just throw it out of the window and move on with your life instead of being sad about it, some people simply can't accept critiques, even though they're the ones asking for it. Unless if someone posts their artwork online without asking for feedback and someone comments on it or even go as far as correcting or editing them, then yes, that's what we call unsolicited advice. No one asked for it, so either swipe to the next post or leave your support to the artist. It is a fact that by nature we don't like to be corrected by others because we humans always think we're the right ones. However, learn to be humble. There will always be skies above skies, and those below you might even surpass you one day. To simply put it, arrogance will be your biggest downfall in life, and those who are willing to learn will definitely surpass you sooner or later. For example, I too used to underestimate people's genuine feedbacks, such as those from my teacher, because I felt like they didn't see through my intentions for the piece I showed them. But trust me guys, especially those who has been in the industry or basically more experienced than you, they see a lot of things we miss when we're on our own, as well as those we might not be aware of yet. Similarly, even though it's coming from a non-artist, if they do have good intentions towards your artwork, when you ask them about it, they'll do their best to describe what may seem rather off from their point of view, or perhaps an input to what you may add, despite struggling to explain it from an artist's point of view. Well, these are the 5 tips I found most useful and relevant from my experience. I hope you found that helpful, especially those who might have experienced similar experiences as me. And thank you so much for staying, and I hope to see you guys again on my next videos.